Hey gamers, welcome to another episode of Bonus XP, and today Patrick and Jason are going to talk about one of the best games of all time.
Final Fantasy IX? We already did
Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX. Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past.
Link to the Past. ALTTP. Yeah, what a great game. Oh my gosh.
Funny, we're like finally focusing on this game because this game is what our YouTube introduction is.
Oh, it's like based off of. That's true. That's a good point. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, Legends of Zelda.
Which, let it be known, Legends of Zelda is not an RPG unless you're willing to make the argument that every game is an RPG.
Yeah, if the role you're playing is just the character, then yes, every game is an RPG.
Yes.
Even like Tetris, like I'm the mastermind that's dropping blocks down.
Everybody knows that when we say RPG, we are meaning like numbers and overly used full text boxes.
I see.
And whatnot.
So you're talking like Zelda 2 RPG.
Oh, I would like if you argued with me that Zelda 2 is an RPG, I would agree with you. I think it's
more RPG.
The elements.
Yeah,
it is more RPG. I would not oppose you as much on that one as I would any of the other games in the genre. So,
but we're talking about Zelda 3. Is it 3, 4? What came first, Link to the Past or was it Link's Awakening? It's gotta be Link to the Past, right?
I don't know if Link's Awakening came first or not. So it's either 3 or 4.
Okay, Zelda 3/4. Link to the Past. So it's such a great game. Where do we want to start with this? Like first impressions on how you played it, or what do you think?
Let's talk about what made it revolutionary. Like, why is this a great game? Like, let's get some facts down. Let's educate the children. Why are we so in love with this game? Because I love this game. Like, this game got a sequel, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Basically.
It kind of got like 2 sequels if you do like Link's Awakening and then Link Between Worlds, but kind of.
I don't know if I would count Awakening as a sequel though, because literally A Link Between Worlds is in the same.
It's the same world. Yeah, it's the same.
I mean, like the map layout is completely the same. It's just like, hey, we decided to remake this game, but not remake this game. That's the kind of way it was.
Yeah, for me. I agree. And let's talk about why it's great. But real quick, one other aside, I think it is worth noting that this game was so great, which we're going to talk about, but it did get like many games in that style because the Oracle games were in that style, like essentially like the Minish Cap game is in that style, like lots of games took this style of Zelda. But why is it great? So I think it's great for many reasons. It just is, but it's great because it does what a sequel should do, especially a sequel on a new console, which, Patrick, I'm going to talk about technology and the way that the games are developed, but it expands upon the original. So let's forget Zelda 2, even though it's one of my favorites, and let's look at the first Zelda compared to this one. It's bigger, it's brighter, it's better. So everything about it is expanded. You have more ways to attack, you have more weapons, you have more dungeons, there's more characters. The story arcs are fun to explore and see. The world is neat to explore and
was
discover.
Ganon even the villain in the second one? I don't remember Zelda 2 all that much.
He's trying to come back. So you prevent it from happening. Yeah, so with Link to the Past, it's so much more. And it's very similar if you played like Final Fantasy 1 and then Final Fantasy 2 in America, 4. You get such a jump from visuals, from presentation, and from storytelling perspectives. You're like, holy crap, this game is just way better than the original one. And it just every aspect I feel like has been improved upon. But that's my basis for why it's great. We can get into details later.
Yeah, it's a very clear progression. I think that's kind of the big thing. When we were talking about Casey and I just did, I'm not sure when this episode's going to air, but when Casey and I were doing that bonus XP or Hyperripe on Final Fantasy 15, and I'm with the Dragon Quest boys, which episode is coming up soon, or it's already posted again. I don't know when this is going to post, but we talked about what Dragon Quest has that what Final Fantasy doesn't. And I think Zelda has also what Dragon Quest does, which is a progression of everything that is a clear trajectory.
You mean from game to game?
Like the game has not lost its identity really throughout the entirety of the series. even Breath of the Wild, which is open world, still very much feels like a Zelda. Like there, we'll do a Breath of the Wild full on discussion here soon, I'm sure. But like, the it was like it still reeked of Zelda, and you could
Yeah.
see how they got there, and that's how I feel about A Link to the Past and why it's so good. Is like you take a look at the first one and you take a look at A Link to the Past and you're like seeing this mastery, and that's what it was for Dragon Quest 2. Like you get to see everything where they're just slowly refining everything, aside from here's this completely new wrench that we're throwing in the mix, like we kind of do for Final Fantasy. Like how are we going to shake it up to make it more interesting? And I think the developers, creators, whatever that you see that we trust the most are the ones who like don't try to just completely break us. You know, they really keep it in this like nice wheelhouse of like I'm familiar enough with everything that I don't have to relearn everything. Like at the core, this is still Legends of Zelda. And even if we go from 2D, like because this was, I think, the pinnacle of the 2D games. It wasn't necessarily like the last one because like you said, we had Minish Cap.
Many more.
Hell, we haven't had Between Worlds. But they still, even though like we're going from 2D to 3D, even though we're going from, you know, like linear to open world, it's still Legends of Zelda. But this is the one that I think solidified the series. Like this is going to be successful because where it was coming from was a good game for its time, but I would not recommend people go back and play the original Legends of Zelda.
Yeah, but I think you could. I feel like it still holds up in the sense that like Mario does, but there are just better versions of those games to play.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like if I was like I had to go back to the earliest Zelda that I think is the best experience, even more so than Ocarina of Time, it's this one. This is kind of like Super Mario World, where anyone can, like, this game lives up still. Anyone can play this game right now, and you are still getting a very good experience of a game.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like the packaging is all there, the graphics, the music, the localization was good. The puzzles still hold up really well. The exploration still holds up really well. The world is still great. The twist that happens like very early in the game is still great. Like there is just so much there that still really holds up, and I don't think the rest of the games necessarily have that. So
that's true. I can agree with that too, and I think that's the testament to why the game is so great. And I think you're bringing up what I would want to call out as being some of Nintendo's like pillar franchises and what they do. So I remember there's like an article or something about Shigeru Miyamoto making Zelda as a contrast to Mario. Like Zelda is more exploring and like adventure, but Mario is more like, I don't know, just running and saving the princess. So there's like two styles here. But as the series developed, and again, especially on the Super Nintendo, I think Zelda started to become Nintendo's like action puzzle game. And like comparing it to other ones like Mario is the platformer, Metroid is like your space shooter. Like, and then Pokemon came later, that's your RPG series. Like there's these things, but Zelda has always been the puzzle one, which to your point about the newer games still feeling Zelda-y, it's because they have that aspect. They have those things of discovering new dungeons, using new weapons and items, solving puzzles, and moving the plot forward that way. And that was really exemplified and solidified in A Link to the Past back in Super Nintendo.
I just thought of this. To me, it's so weird that Metroid and Castlevania have their own like style game, like Metroidvania. But like Legends of Zelda doesn't. Like
there's no Zelda like
there's no Zelda like game. But I mean, like, to me, a Legends of Zelda game is probably the OG Metroidvania.
Well, I would challenge that perspective, because I think that you don't get too many people saying like, oh, this is a Zelda like, but like you definitely hear this is Zelda clones. And nowadays there's still games that are inspired by that, like Tunic is that new one. I mean,
so I need to play that game. It is on the list.
and there's so many others that are clearly inspired by Zelda, and it's not just like Zelda in general. It's Link to the Past. Like that is the one that they're harkening back to. And if we could talk about it for a little bit, I feel like some of the reasons why the game is just really great, which is what we were talking about first, it handles and plays really well. Like if you want to go there, you can move there. Like you can start attacking, you can attack the bushes and they break and you find rupees. You can run into the trees and bees fly
out. Hear
out.
that, people? Jason wants to attack them bushes.
Attack the bushes and then rupees appear. But it's just so fun, and it combines with the exploration of like zone to zone. Like you shift the camera and it moves to the next area. You're like, what's going to be here? You learn enemy patterns. You eventually fight bosses. Like there's just so much smart gameplay, like progression and design, exactly, that you as the player just want to keep going. And there's enough like intrigue too to be like, ooh, that water is dark blue, I fall in there. And then you get a flipper and you're like, wow, now I can explore this whole new area. Like it's such a neat aspect that was at the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, like pretty unique. I think it was the first time I can, at least I know I can personally say I had that in a game.
Yeah, I think so we also did the episode with David Vink. So like again, I don't know when this is this episode.
These are all mysteries. Yeah.
After. But if we haven't posted it yet, David Vink episode is probably coming soon. And we talked about the Super Nintendo and like why the Super Nintendo mattered so much. And I think this game really solidifies that example. It's refined. Like this game is so much a refinement of anything that you saw on the Nintendo, because nothing on the Nintendo was like this. And this was what, a launch game or launch-ish, launch adjacent. Yeah. So like this showed you what the Super Nintendo could do. This showed you what games could be so successfully.
Like I like that. I like that.
Nintendo in its prime.
It's in its prime, and I think that it's moving the narrative from these are just toys to this is a hobby in a sense, and it still kind of is, but it's not just for kids. I mean, and you could, I guess, tell a decent story on the NES, but hardware wise you were limited, and with the SNES you no longer were. Like text boxes were bigger, your data could be more, you can tell huge stories, and it was fantastic.
Absolutely.
But let's maybe talk about more of like gameplay aspects. I think something that stood out to me is the use of items. There's so many items in this game, and they're creatively used to like explore dungeons. Just talk about the Pegasus boots you mentioned earlier, and being able to run over things. Just that way that it opens up new ways to explore and attack. And then in really smart moves, like Nintendo's designers have made dungeons and bosses that are susceptible to these specific things. So like you have to use them to go through. And it's well, just and even such in the sense
where it's not even like, I think of the first boss in the World of Darkness, where you're canonically supposed to use the hammer to beat him because that's what you get. But like you can do it with bombs, and
with the bombs
things. It's a little thing that like every Zelda game has some kind of boss that you can cheese, whether it's the plant that you pour the water on, the special water on in Wind Waker, or it's using the fishing pole to beat Ganon. Like there's I love these little things. Like you think it's like linear in its approach on how to beat it, but not completely. And some of the bosses are literally just like crazy, not necessarily bullet hell, but if you're not a bullet hell person, it feels like it, where like you got the spikes coming at you and you got the heads rotating and like shooting everything, like it's just really great design. I will say though, I kind of think that Link's Awakening has the advantage on the items for games that came out at that time, because being able to combine
jump,
well, so it's frustrating in Link's Awakening that like your sword and your shield are items that you have to
A and B,
but like the fact that you can combine those boots with jumping,
the feather,
or feather and bombs, or this and that, I kind of like that a little bit, because it's weird to think that like you are just limited to just the one item.
You telling me I can't hold this and run and throw a bomb? Like, come on, like
right. I think seeing ways that you could upgrade your equipment was a lot of fun, and not necessarily like it's secret stuff. Like you can upgrade your sword a few times, but it's not required. You to beat Ganon, you do have to upgrade your bow, but the game doesn't give it to you.
You have to figure it out.
Yeah,
and like why would I throw my sword or whatever into that pool. Like, am I gonna get it back? Like, you don't really know, but like you get rewarded for that, and that's just, it's really fun to explore and see those things. Oh, speaking of exploring, I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet, but just finding the heart pieces. That's
Oh yeah.
I think that started here. I guess technically it started with Zelda 1 and 2, but like it felt like nice that there was the mini puzzles, like in the graveyard, you move a grave and there's a little place to get a heart piece. Like it made you feel like everywhere I go, there's a reason I'm here. What does this screen offer me? Like, what if I blow that rock up, or what if I do this? And it's just such a neat thing to do. Like, you always feel like there's something fun that you could challenge next.
Well, that's why I was kind of saying, like, this game almost feels like more so the original Metroidvania, because even though it's not a side scroller, like, it still has that come back later when you have upgrades and you can go and do different things. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, let's talk about our favorite memories with the game, because like this is one of those games where you could convince me to like boot it up at any point and I'd be like, yes.
Okay, we're playing. All right.
You still get the same joy out of it, like it is.
I've got a couple for you. So in my vast game collection, I do not own Link to the Past. I don't really do Super Nintendo games, but it was one of the games we rented.
Why?
I needed to cut off the collection at some point, so I don't collect that. I know, right?
Of all the things you're not going to collect?
Well, okay, but if it ever came up and it was a good deal, I would be very interested. Anyways, we did rent this game multiple times. So, like, what a fantastic game to rent. Like, it's such a fun way to spend an evening or a Saturday morning. But the memories I have start from, like, right when you boot it up with that music. I think the music just does so much for that game. And in my mind, as we're talking, I already hear, like, the challenge of that one rainy night, like where you go to find your uncle, I think is who it is.
Oh, so you mean when you're actually starting the game? For me, it's dialing it a step back and just turning
the intro,
on the game and just the intro into like the setting the scene. And the beautiful, like I think it's still kind of beautiful. The illustration, in the
castle,
like, all of that is just so
it's
iconic.
so grand and epic. And I feel like that game's music is one of the games that really like turned me on to game music. Like it is so solid, and it fits the adventure, and it only exemplified later with like your Final Fantasies and with your other fantastic orchestrated pieces.
They just can't make game music like they used to. Like, I'll play games, they'll be like, this is a catchy tune, but there's just something about, well, I think Dragon Quest might be the only series where I'm like into the music. But Zelda, like, and a lot of the Super Nintendo era games, just like, what is so captivating. Even some of like the bad games,
they still have good music.
Yeah, they still have really good music.
Yeah, and like that is just, it's so cool. And like getting to each new zone and then hearing the next song was exciting. And I want to let you talk too, but I have one more connection, and it's something we mentioned earlier.
No, Jason, I'm gonna go.
No, and it's I feel like Zelda always harkens back to nostalgia for the players. So like even now with Tears of the Kingdom coming out, we saw a recent trailer, and I'm gonna forget the name, but they showed that three-headed dragon boss. And that boss has been in the series since literally the very first Zelda game. And like when they did it, they also played music that was from the first game. Like you could hear the jingles.
Oh, really?
You could hear jingles happening from the original games. And so I feel like it's neat that they, or at least I thought it, maybe it's my mind playing tricks on me. But
Jason
cool
does tend to make things up. So
yeah, I completely
fact check him, not me.
I'm not even bald. This is a cap. So I think that sense of nostalgia always plays in.
Wait. No, can you like? What if you had hair this entire time?
Wouldn't that be wild?
If you had a full head of hair.
Yeah. No, wild. I don't. My head is like flipped around. This is my actual hair. Anyways, nostalgia. So I think that with Link to the Past, it already has some of that because you get some repeats, things like that. But this is where I think a lot of it's grounded. So like when there's callbacks, you might call back to the Link to the Past with an item like the hook shot, for example, or other like spells, abilities, musical tones, enemies. A lot of them are from here, and I think that's a really cool factor for this game that I've carried with me since 1994, I think, when I played it. But yeah, what about you? I want to hear your thoughts.
Good, wonderful, wholesome memories. Well, piggybacking off of that, like just even discovering a secret and the secret music, like every time, just like, and but specifically for that game. I just think it's really good. I don't like, what's the technical description of the sound type for the Super Nintendo era? Like, does it have a name kind of like Sega did with how it did its music?
I mean, like midis or like
Is it just
chip
midis?
tunes, yeah, something like that.
I just some things were just made for that, you know,
Yeah.
like it always frustrated me when Game Boy Advanced or DS would get like versions of these older games, but the music wasn't one to one. Like you could tell that like this is not the same track. Like it had to be changed just a little bit. So all the little tunes. What else? I mean, literally just discovering that there is a whole other world to explore, even though you know it. Like, if you've played any game before, you know that I have like 3 hearts and I'm fighting this guy in this tower and I only have 6 hearts, but there's so much more room.
There's so much more room and real estate on the board.
There is, unless I'm really bad at finding things in games, there is no way.
You're telling me I only collect 3 pendants and the game is over? I don't think so.
So I think that was a big thing. I liked the magic bar. I know that's a little controversial. I don't necessarily like how you couldn't beat some of the bosses unless you like
had magic.
Had the magic, but getting those screen clearing spells,
those like disc ones,
I wish that was something that could have been taken further, because it's almost like you could have your little play style in that game, which you don't necessarily get in a lot of the other Legends of Zelda.
You could be like Mage Link.
You could be Mage, you could be Mage Link, or you could be Ranged Link, or you could be like Melee Link. And like I kind of like that, where it's not necessarily you're getting your like all this really like high tiered equipment, but it's just like the things that he actually gets and then impacts your play style. So I like there's something really special about getting those spells. Like as a kid, that would really make me geek out a little bit of just kind of like, I just made the entire screen explode. Like that was so was so much fun.
That is kind of fun. And I feel like they kind of explored that with Ocarina of Time with those spells, like Din's Fire and Nehru's Love and whatnot. But it never really came back all that much in my opinion. It was kind of unique to this game.
Yeah, so definitely Ocarina of Time was the last time to see that. I think the last big thing was fighting Ganon. I was
just gonna say, what was your like pinnacle moment for the bosses? So Ganon was cool.
I mean, I wouldn't say the first 3 bosses are really easy. I think walking into the first boss room and seeing the 6 statues and being then they like,
move around,
oh shit, like there are 6 of them and they're pretty much taking up the entire screen. That's intimidating. I think most of the bosses are well designed, aside from Moldorm or whatever the worm's name is.
The worm guy up at the top,
he looks like a hamburger, first of all.
And then he just becomes smaller hamburgers as he stretches out.
But I think really just the Ganon fight at the end is very epic, and like you drop in, there's no dungeon for him, you just drop in,
you just go
pit,
in
and you literally have to pull out a little bit of everything. Like you have to light the torches because he's invisible, and like it's hard. Like that is a pretty hard boss battle compared to a lot of other boss battles in games. So
it is, I agree, and it does smart things where it harkens back to that game where you've done things like that you've done for other bosses. Like you have to shoot arrows appropriately. You have to light the torches, like you said. You have to dodge his spinny staff thingy. Like a lot of things that you've already done, but now it's like, all right, man, if you're going to do it, you got to do it now. And like, this is how you're supposed to win the game. It's a neat way to end the game.
You know what else is really cool? The fact that you can go the Master Sword before you can actually draw the Master Sword, and that the actual like screen with the lighting, like the sun coming through the trees, like
you walk up, to get there,
You know, like that is a big moment. Like it is something that is just very impactful, and then when you actually get to draw it, and all the animals around,
the animals are there,
such a
classic.
Oh, and this too. How could we not even talk about this? This is the first one where the dual worlds and how like exploring in one world can impact
get you in the other
world. Like you have you literally, it's not like you do something and it impacts another world, but like
you have
there. But you have to maneuver it, you know, like you have to just be like, okay, I know that I need to look for a portal over here to get here, or else
To
I'm
get
not gonna
on
be
this
able to
mountain that
advance.
doesn't exist the other place.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
that was
kind of
pretty
like
cool.
the original Upside Down from Stranger Things
It's
in a
like Stranger
way.
Things, yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
instead of becoming a weird Vecna monster, you became this nice little rabbit creature that seemed like it might be your friend. So it
Yeah.
worked.
Oh, I like that. That might be the title of this episode. How Legends of Zelda: Link to the Past is like Stranger
Yeah,
Things.
yeah. Stranger Things ripped off Link to the Past. Click
Clickbait.
again. Click again. Yeah, exactly.
Clickbait. Okay, well, Jason, anything else to just kind of talk about one of our favorite games? Or are you good?
I do want to mention back something that you said before, but I feel like this game is still infinitely replayable. I think it
Yeah,
stands the test of time in a way that maybe like Chrono Trigger might, Final Fantasy IX might, where I feel like you can keep playing it and still enjoy it for what it is. If you
it's
haven't,
comfort food.
it's comfort food for sure. It's comfort food for us because we've played it, but I feel like it's still a good food for people that have not played it. And I think it's on Switch. I think if you have Nintendo Switch Online, it's on there.
It's
Maybe
it's on Switch because I have your account.
you have mine. Perfect.
But I also, it's also on the, I'm looking at it right now, the classic Super Nintendo.
Oh, perfect, perfect. So
yeah.
it's like readily available. It is worth time. So I think if you've played any 2D style Zelda games, many of them will call back to this anyways, and it's for a good reason. It's a solid game that I think is an easy recommendation. You can play whenever you want, and it'll be a fun time no matter how old you are or how old the game is.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely pick it up. All right, well, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, definitely drop in the comments, give us a follow, be a part of the conversation. What were your favorite moments for Legends of Zelda? We definitely want to know, and I'm always checking the comments, whether it's hate mail or lovely people, so let us know your thoughts.
Be one of the lovelies.
Yeah, please be one of the lovelies. We get enough hate, so it is what it is. If you're just listening, if you're listening to us on the podcast or whatever you listen to the podcast, which might be iTunes or Apple Podcasts
or Spotify,
or Spotify or any of the things, head on over to our Instagram or Discord to be a part of the conversation. We want to thank you for listening or watching. Now go out there and get gaming.